Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid, and this is a recording that is definitely a few days in the making. It seems like every time I wanted to sit down and collect my thoughts on the transfer portal so far, a new name, a new commitment was announced, and they have come in such a rapid fire succession that literally it seems like at times every couple of minutes we were getting a new commitment, and it would make my notes from earlier in that day already irrelevant. So we are at a point now where maybe things are going to cool down. I doubt it. I feel stupid for even saying that. But we have a good sense right now of where the roster is, where it could potentially still go. And I want to get something out here before the weekend, before God knows how many more kids are going to commit over the weekend. I know there's more visits coming in. So let's get into it. I don't want to go through position by position so much and talk about each individual player. It's basically come down to, like I usually kind of do, is I've gone through all the additions so far, and I've looked at the position groups and starting to ask questions about those position groups so we can maybe start thinking ahead towards what we're going to be looking like for the 26th season. Also have a few of your guys' questions sprinkled in here as well. So let's just kind of go through it. The first one, and I still haven't really gotten an answer on this. This is my question. How many roster spots are actually still available to be filled for this upcoming season? Because if you look at the scholarship distribution charts, and there's a few of them out there, but I'm using John McNamara's right now. It's been the one that I've been using so far. He's putting us at 106 out of 105 roster spots available. It means we're plus one. Now, I know that's not entirely accurate because with the House settlement and the changes in the roster limits, there is a grandfathering in of some of the walk-ons. And I've tried looking up to see which of the walk-ons on the roster would have fit into that category, and I can't find anything. I can't find anything concrete about it. But if I were to make a guess, I would say at least the upperclassmen would be in that gray area, that grandfathered in area. So if I want to look at the roster, we have 2 walk-ons in the senior class, and we have 7 walk-ons in the junior class. My math says that's 9. And that would mean to me we have 8 roster spots available. I could be way off, but I think that's a pretty decent way to think of it. I mean, there's another 15 or 16 in the lower classes from there. So there might be a couple more that should be counted towards this that I don't know. But let's say 8. Let's say 8. And we're going to talk about maybe later about how we could potentially fill those spots. But we'll start with 8. All right. So now knowing kind of how many roster spots we have in our head, as we go through talking about the position groups and asking some questions about the positions, let's think about, is that position group done? Do we need to add more? All right, so the first position group we want to talk about is the quarterbacks, and this question comes from you guys, is how can the staff justify adding not 1 but 2 quarterbacks to the roster, and what does that say about what they think about Carter Smith? Well, we'll get the easy one out of the way first. We knew they were going to be adding another quarterback with Colton Joseph. We knew it regardless of what they thought about Carter Smith. I want everyone to go back and to think about where the roster was at this point last season. We were entering the transfer portal opening, and then where we were at the end of the season, and where we were at the end of the season, and where we should have been at the end of the season. So when Carter Smith committed, we had not added the two transfer quarterbacks that we got. Okay, that's one thing. We added two transfer quarterbacks last season, Billy Edwards Jr. and Danny O'Neal. Okay, Carter Smith has knew from the outset that there was going to be at least one quarterback above him with eligibility, Danny O'Neal. And so, therefore, regardless of what they were going to add, he was at least going to have one upperclassman quarterback above him. Now, going into the 2026 season, I think it's very important to be thinking about it, is that Danny O'Neal is injured. And with an Achilles, and at the point of the season that he got that injury, it is very likely that he is going to miss most, if not the entire 2026 season. To be honest, it would probably be in his best interest that if he was offered the ability to medically redshirt this year, that he takes it. Because by the time he's even healthy, Colton Joseph should be solidified as the starter. So all the best position he's going to be in is to be a backup. So if he wants to have any chance of playing, it's going to be in 27 anyways. Colton Joseph has a great season. He could bounce for the NFL after 26. Danny would be in position to be a starter in 27 as a senior. Okay. This upcoming season, Carter Smith is going to be a redshirt freshman. I think the plan all along was for Carter Smith to be a backup and potentially a third stringer as the redshirt freshman. His ascension into the starting lineup towards the end of last season was out of necessity, not out of plan. And I think they had to skip a lot of steps in his development last season to get him ready to do something on the field at that point. He had a lot of work to do. That's why they brought in two quarterbacks ahead of him. Well, three quarterbacks ahead of him, if you include Hunter Simmons. So he wasn't going to play last year. I don't think the plan was for him to play this year. That's why, I know that by this point, he has been in the loop about his plans all offseason, and that's why it was publicly announced that he had re-signed for this year. Carter Smith is a smart kid. I think he seems to be a mature kid. He knows his positioning, and I think he's going to position himself to be ready to compete for the starting job in 27, like had always been the plan. If he wins the competition, fantastic. If he loses, well, that's what it is. But then he'd still have eligibility left after that. Okay? He's only a redshirt freshman this year. He would go into the 2027 season as a redshirt sophomore with 3 years of eligibility left. So I don't think it says anything about Carter Smith. I think it says something about that they are trying to get back to how things used to be, where you took a quarterback every year in the recruiting process. And if you look at how the scholarships or the room is set up now, we have two juniors, a sophomore, a redshirt freshman, and a true freshman. Okay, we haven't even talked about Deuce Adams yet. Going into next season, let's say Colton Joseph is still here in 27, and Danny O'Neal takes his redshirt year. Then we are going to have Colton Joseph as a senior, Danny O'Neal as a redshirt junior, Deuce Adams as a redshirt junior, Carter Smith as a redshirt sophomore, and Ryan Hopkins as a redshirt freshman, and then probably a true freshman. And that we're going to get that balance back. And it's what is needed to have a healthy quarterback room. Our quarterback room has not been healthy for a while. And this is going back to the Paul Chryst era, where, I mean, you got past the starter, and God help us in a lot of those situations. We got to that point last year, too, where our backups were either not ready for primetime football or too young for primetime football. So I'm not worried about the quarterback room. I want to get through this year. I want to get that balance back, and I want to really see an offense that's built around the quarterback going into 2026 and then into 2027. All right, so that's quarterbacks. Let's talk about running backs. And the big question that I see with the running backs is, do we have too many now? And I've seen people talk about we've added 3 players in the portal so far. Abu Sama from Iowa State, Brian Jackson from USC, and then most recently yesterday, Nate Palmer from TCU. Is 6 tailbacks too many in this type of offense? And I've seen that come up a lot. And again, I don't think people have really been paying attention to their history, where, I mean, Paul Chryst would have 8 tailbacks, 7 tailbacks in an offense that really didn't feature a lot of running backs. It was different back during the the Gary Anderson era, where and the end of the Brett Bielema era, where you had your number one, but you had 2s and 3s that would really contribute a lot. I mean, there was when James White and Melvin Gordon and Corey Clement were the top 3 backs. There was a point where all 3 of them were close to 1,000 yards. And I think we had at least 2,000. I think James White and Melvin Gordon both had 1,000 yards that season. And so back then, it wasn't too many running backs. I think eventually guys thought it that way, and that's where you saw guys like Isaac Garendo and Julius Davis end up leaving. But if anything, history has shown us the last few years, we need depth. We need a depth with talent, and we need variety in the backfield. But I don't think they're done at adding running backs to the roster. And I think primarily the reason for that is getting Natuka's health. He's not going to play in 2026. And with how quiet the news has been about him since his injury, I mean, really the only thing that we have seen or heard about him is the thumbs up of him on the plane on the way home, and that he was listed as out in those last couple games of the regular season. Head and neck injuries are tough in that it can really scare guys and medical professionals. So I would caution any thought of him playing in 26 and maybe even 27 and beyond. So I think for right now, we should assume that Gilly Natuka is not going to be on the roster in 2026 and going forward. So that really puts us at 5 tailbacks. Is that enough? Last season, we were down to Grover Bortolotti at one point. So I don't think they're done. I think they need another running back. I think they need a running back who's probably like a redshirt freshman type, a development player to kind of grow up with Quantavious Wiggins and to just provide down the roster depth. I like the balance of the types of running backs that they've brought in. Abu Sama really seems like your all-purpose kind of back. Brian Jackson is your thumper. I like Nate Palmer. I've seen some. If you look at some of his from high school, I like the balance. And then you got Darian Dupree, who we might be talking a little bit about with the receivers as well. He's got a lot of roles that he could fill going into next year that could get him a lot of playing time, not just at running back. So just because the number says we have, quote unquote, a lot, it's not as many as we normally would have, and it's necessary. And I don't think they're done filling that spot. Speaking of receivers, we've got two questions that really come to mind with the receiver room so far. Let's get the big one out of the way first. Is bringing Eugene Hilton back more of a problem than good? I'm sure by now a lot of you have already seen the quote-unquote controversy that came with the comment that he made on a Mason post, an Instagram post, and yada, yada, yada. The first thing I will say to that, unless you are a 21 and under kid, don't assume to understand what a kid means with what they say, what they post, or anything like that. I have been working with teenagers my entire professional life. I have no idea what they actually mean 95% of the time. It is like having a word have 15 different meanings depending on the tone or the delivery of the word. And we're just reading a word on a computer screen. So some might interpret that cap comment as negative. The only people that it matters for is the players in the locker room. And I don't think the players care. I don't think the players read any deeper into those three letters than they should. And they know that we can use his talent. They know what he is in the locker room. I think it's fine. And then let's just be real. We got our biggest portal loss back. Okay? Eugene Hilton Jr., it was the biggest portal loss that we have had so far this year. Some would argue that Christian Allegro was a bigger loss because of how much he has had in the past. Well, the difference between Christian Allegro and Eugene Hilton Jr. is Christian Allegro has two players above him who can replace him on the roster. Is there anybody who's currently on the roster or who was on the roster at the end of the 2025 season who could be equal or above Eugene Hilton's talent? I would argue no. So to get him back is a big win for the team. Also shows something to the persistence of the staff, and it's a win. And I'm not going to read too much into what his Instagram posts are. So now that we've talked about that, let's talk about a question that I've seen a lot as well, is who's going to play slot? Because we've added receivers. Jalen Domingo from Southeast Louisiana, Shamar Rigby from Oklahoma State, and Eugene Hilton Jr. coming back. The room is looking a lot better than it certainly did at one point. But who's going to play slot? because we're already starting to get, depth chart projections going into next year. A lot of people are putting Domingo, Rigby, and Hilton as 1, 2, 3. And some people think it's a 2, 3, 4 kind of setup, which I could see as well. Um, but none of them are really slot receivers. So who's going to play in the slot? Well, I think the obvious one that people have been not talking a lot about is the guy who ended up playing a lot of slot reps and kind of took the role that Tretch Krekahuna was supposed to have last year, and that's Tyrell Henry. Now, he had some injury concerns, and he got dinged up at points, and he missed some time, but he handled a lot more of the run game than Tretch did, at least more variation in the run game than Tretch did. And there's your obvious one there. I think Darian Dupree as well is going to get some run as a slot receiver. I mean, when you got 6 tailbacks, 5 tailbacks, whatever, we're looking at 5 or 6, depending if we're going to add another guy, and everyone kind of filling a role. Yeah, he could be a third down back in the offense, but I could also see him being a first and second down slot receiver. So that's going to add some balance there. I think another way where we're going to get more slot receivers, obviously, is we're going to be playing with a lot more 12 personnel. Tyler Jancy coming in and playing some fullback. So it's not necessarily who is going to play slot, but it's how are they going to fill that third skill position spot after the 2 outside receivers. And I think it's going to be a balance between Tyrell Henry, Darian Dupree, and a little bit more 12 personnel with the extra tight end. Next up, let's talk about the offensive line. And they have been active in the portal with the offensive line. They've added 4 so far. I'd like to think that they're done with the offensive line in the portal, assuming that we don't get any last-minute departures. And there are a couple guys who are still on the roster that, quite frankly, I am surprised that they are still there. Whether it be the coach that recruited them is no longer here, or you're a guy who maybe had some attitude issues and were maybe asked to start looking at the portal because of those attitude issues. I think they have been, at least the attitude issues have been dealt with. And the walk-on types or the lower guys on the roster and the guys who are often injured so far haven't left. So let's assume that nobody leaves. That's going to put them at 16 scholarship linemen, and there are 3 walk-ons. I think that means they are probably done. Maybe they add one more. Another swing. I would probably say more like a swing tackle type of guy. I think we got plenty of interior guys, but another swing guy would probably be a good idea on the outside. But the big thing, what I really like about what they've done so far with the line is we are starting to get better balance in the room. And what I mean by balance is obviously in the 24 and 25 class, there was this huge push to bring in a lot of players because there really wasn't anything above. And if you look at where we were at this point going into the offseason, we had 2 upperclassmen offensive linemen, Barrett Nelson and Leighton Nelson. Both were injured last year. Barrett Nelson, I don't think, has been anything but injured since he's been here. And then you had 4 sophomores and 5 redshirt freshmen going into this upcoming season. And then you had one true freshman coming into this year as well. And but there was two upperclassmen. So they've addressed that by bringing in senior center Austin Kwiecki, which obviously huge need. And I systematically he's going to fit so well. People are talking so much about his pass blocking skills, his pass blocking numbers, but the quickness that he shows as a center cannot be understated. Its importance in the wide zone system. He needs to be able to snap that ball with his right hand and then get out there and wall off a three tech to his right. We need a guy like that. That changes the dynamic of this type of offense when you can have a center who can move like that. Again, at the times where Jake Renfro has been healthy the last 2 years, you can see the difference in how the offensive line is played. I think Austin Kwiecki is going to be that type of guy. You got Ryan Corey there as a backup. Then picking up Lucas Simmons from Florida State. Love seeing him come in. And I've said this on Twitter, but I'll say it here too. It's kind of cool. I actually have met his father over 20 years ago when I was coaching in Sweden. We were very briefly, I guess not on the same staff. He only came out and helped out for a couple practices, but kind of cool to see that connection come through. He is a mammoth kid who is really athletic for being 6'8" and over 300 pounds. In most worlds, you'd probably say there's your left tackle. Kevin Haywood is there, which leads to an interesting thought is, Kevin Haywood played right tackle in high school. Would it be better to move Kevin Haywood to the right and put Lucas Simmons on the left, where I think Lucas Simmons played more at Florida State? Or do you just assume that Lucas Simmons' athletic ability is going to allow him to be versatile and play on either side? Regardless, I think the tackle position right there is pretty solid. And then you got your development guys like Rusky and Davenport behind them. And then, of course, you've got the two upperclassmen. I think tackle's pretty set. And that allows us to move Emerson Mandel back inside to one of the guard spots. You got Cubberly and Blake Cherry, the transfer coming in from Arkansas. Those three guys fighting for the guard spots. And then you got, the guys down on the younger guys, your Logan Powers, your Cam Clarks, your Hardy Watts of the world. What I'm getting at is there's balance in the offensive line room again. It's not perfect. I mean, you'd like to see 3 guys every class, something like that, 3-4 guys every class, so there's not as much of a logjam when you get to certain points, but the balance is there. And you get guys coming in who are going to push the younger guys, but then they're also going to help us be in a position where we don't have to rely on the younger guys. Remember, all those great offensive lines of Wisconsin in the past were not built on 4-year starters. We get one every now and then. That's for sure. But they were built on guys who became starters as redshirt juniors or maybe a redshirt sophomore. And guys getting 2, 3, sometimes 1 year as a starter. And then when he leaves, a guy very similar to him and replace him. What we've had the last couple of years is an upperclassman. They get injured, and then we got a redshirt freshman coming in, a true freshman coming in. And now at least we can see it's going to take a little bit of work to get to the freshman and the redshirt freshman in the depth chart. And that is going to be encouraging. And that's going to help us if, again, God forbid, we get into the injury issues that we had last season. So feeling pretty happy where we are with the offensive line so far. All right, so let's talk about the D line. And obviously, the big question with the D line is what we're missing and how much more work is going to be done in that group. I still think that they are probably missing the true nose, your space heater, double team absorber guy in the middle, the Ben Barton, the Parker Peterson, the Brandon Lane types that we had last season. We're probably still kind of missing that guy. Hammond Russell coming in from West Virginia is probably going to be the first guy looked to be filling that spot. Dylan Johnson was in that rotation kind of last year. I still think he seems undersized for a nose. I know the numbers say otherwise, or his height weight might seem otherwise, but his frame just looks smaller. I think he holds his own, but I still think we could use a true nose. And a question that I got was about Junior Poyser, the transfer coming in from Buffalo, and he's got an intriguing skill set. He put up some pretty good numbers last year as an interior tackle at Buffalo, but people are saying it's like he didn't start playing football until senior year of high school. Should that be a concern? And the easy answer for that is no, because the benefit sometimes with players not starting playing football until later in their high school days is there is less wear and tear on the body at that point. What I also like about Junior Poyser is, he went to a fancy prep school in high school as an international student coming in from Canada. And he is I believe it was a 2-time academic all-MAC player on top of his football skills, in which he's shown he's pretty good. He is a disruptor as a interior D tackle. I'm pretty excited. I think there is a lot of upside to him. And, because he didn't start playing football until he was later on in his high school careers, and he went to a more of an academic school coming in as a foreigner. He was probably under recruited based on his talent. And to me, that kind of sounds like a Wisconsin player to me. Sounds like the type of guy we would have always gotten in the past, maybe as a walk-on, and they develop into something. I think he's got nothing but upside, and I look forward to seeing what he can bring to the defense this year. All right, so next let's talk about the outside linebackers, and the big question that we have with the inside linebacker group right now is the fact that there is a logjam in the redshirt sophomore junior class, in that right now there's no seniors, and then we've got 6 guys in the junior redshirt sophomore class, and then 1 true freshman. And you would think with that many players in the same age group, and to fill 2 spots, mind you, we still think we're going to be the 2-4-ish kind of defense. There's a logjam. Only so many guys can play. And honestly, if Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano come off the field, the defense gets worse, right? So are we surprised that the Thomas Heibergers and the Landon Gothiers of the world haven't transferred out, especially when they add another inside linebacker like John Kamara? And To me, I would say no because I think how the defensive setup kind of started moving towards an ending last season has turned this seven guys playing two spots type of system into seven guys playing three spots. Because I think we are going to see a lot more of the star package where you had three inside linebackers on the field at the same time, or three off the ball linebackers, I think was the better way to put it. Where last season you saw a lot of Aaron Witt playing that overhang outside linebacker spot. Thomas Heiberger started to get some reps in that group as well. And so, especially in rundowns, but it proved to be a pretty solid group overall. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that three linebacker look. And if you look at the roster, how it's set up, that was part of the supposed selling point to get Christian Allegro to stay, is that they were going to move Mason Posa out to that overhang star linebacker spot. So just the fact that they were thinking about putting Mason Posa out there means that that is going to be an important part of the defense this year. You're going to have Posa and Catalan on the inside, and then probably Thomas Heiberger and John Kamara are going to be the first guys up to play that star linebacker spot, get that combination of it. The athletic upside of John Kamara is just through the roof. I think he's a perfect guy to put in that spot because he is so fast and he's so strong that he's the type of guy that he could cover a lot of space. You could blitz him off the edge and be in great shape. Thomas Heiberger is a tackling machine. So I love that combination out there. And then if you get someone like Landon Gothier and Taylor Schaefer, or Tyler Schaefer, Taylor Schaefer, excuse me, to rotate on the inside and give us depth on the inside, then I think we're in pretty good shape. I think that brings, again, balance. Now, could they add another player in the portal? Potentially. But if they do, it would have to either be I think if anything, it would only be a young guy. I don't think you're going to bring in a senior depth piece. I think Schaefer kind of takes that spot that Antarian Turner was supposed to fill this year, and can't add more to the logjam. So I think inside linebacker they're pretty set, and I think you're just going to see a lot more different personnel packages with the inside linebackers leading the way. Speaking of the linebackers, let's talk about the outside linebackers and who is going to be this year's Mason Reiger. And I think a lot of people saw Mason Reiger last season as the kind of a poor man's TJ Watt, pass rusher, disruptor on the outside. But he was fundamentally sound, one of the best linebackers we've had in a while. And they used him in so many different ways last year obviously as a pass rusher on the outside edge. They would kick him inside and use him as a three tech. They would put him with his hand in the dirt as an edge player. They moved him inside, outside with that. So when we're talking about who's going to be Mason Reiger, I think the pass rush aspect is going to be fine. You're going to see Nick Clayton and Sebastian Cheeks, those type, really taking on that edge rusher type of role. I think Sebastian Cheeks is going to settle right back into where he finished most of last year as your field side outside linebacker. Nick Clayton's going to be your pass rush specialist. And then you're going to get the Tyrese Fearbreeze and the Michael Gardners and now Justice Boone coming in as the combination of the Mason Reiger kind of multi-role boundary outside linebacker, and then the run-stopping disruptor on the field side that we got with Daryl Peterson last year. I think Daryl Peterson and Mason Reiger kind of did the same job, but Mason Reiger was a little bit more consistent. So I think with where the depth is now, we need a guy who can probably take more of the run responsibilities for those looks. So someone like Michael Gardner, who's a little bit bigger and is more of a pseudo defensive lineman, could fill the rundown rep goals rep. You know what I'm trying to say of Daryl Peterson from last year, and then you got Tyrese Fearby. He got reps early on. His reps kind of tailed off as the season went, so maybe he could also be in that type of role. And I'd like to see what Justice Boone can bring us. But I would probably be shocked if your top three at the outside linebacker spots next year would not be Nick Clayton, Sebastian Cheeks, and Michael Gardner, with Fearbury and Boone adding depth and adding balance to that group. All right, coming up towards the end here, we've got the defensive backs, the corners, and the safeties. And we could kind of lump the questions for these two position groups kind of together and think of it as the secondary as a whole, which is, I think, another thing that they're doing this year with bringing in Robert Steeples to coach corners and having Paul Haynes kind of overseeing the defensive back group. We don't currently have a Nichols coach because Scott Power is now the head coach at Central Washington. But the overall group, the questions we can kind of have is, who's going to play nickel, because we lost our nickel in Jameer Latimer. We have all of these new corners coming in on top of the corners we had last year. Could any of these guys transition to be playing safety to bring us more depth there? And who is the free safety amongst the safety group, because we are losing Preston Zachman? All right, so let's have those ideas in our head. So first things first, who's going to play nickel? I think the answer there is pretty simple. It's a twofold answer. One, I think we're going to see a lot of the three linebacker look, so there's not going to be a nickel all the time. But when there is going to be a nickel, I think the easy answer is Bryce West coming in from Ohio State, because a lot of people were pegging him to be the starter at nickel for Ohio State this year. So to me, right there's your answer. Now, we got all these new corners coming in: Eric Fletcher, Kai Bates, Bryce West, and Javen Robinson. Can any of these guys potentially be a safety? I've heard that Kai Bates, he's an all-around. He could kind of play anywhere. As if you listen to Brian Smith, he could play every position on defense. Basically, I don't know if I'd go that far, but he could certainly become a safety type. Carlos Skanes got some safety reps last year when Austin Brown was dinged up, so that could potentially be. But I think Javen Robinson is definitely going to be one of your starting corners. Emilio Agard and Eric Fletcher probably going to be in position to take the other side. So could Kairos Gaines and Kai Bates be in the nickel discussion with Bryce West? Could one of them be moved to safety? Who knows? But the question is like, who is going to be the free safety? Matt Young occupied that spot a lot last year, kind of out of necessity, because obviously of Preston Zachman's injury. And I'm not as negative on his play as a lot of people are. I think part of it was they didn't adjust schematically as much as maybe they should have with Young. But I thought he played fine over the top. Now, that being said, I think he was more naturally fitted to play the role that Austin Brown did last year. Your boundary side box safety, the guy who would come down, play the hook to curl, jump down in the flat, blitz off the edge, that type of guy. I think he's way more suited for that spot. It fits his natural playmaking ability. He has enough range that you put him on the short side of the field as a high safety. He can run under most routes. I don't think there's going to be an issue there. I thought his ability to track the ball last year was pretty solid, but of course he's much better playing tracking from top down than from top out or up as we got last year. So I think he's going to be that spot. Marvin Burks coming in from Mizzou, you would probably think, even though he's more of a strong safety type, given his athletic ability and given what's on the roster already, he's probably your first in line to be the strong or the free safety. Matthew Trainor's coming off of a torn ACL. I don't know when he's going to be ready, but he's definitely more of a box safety type. Raphael Dunn is, he was recruited to play the dollar kind of position. So he could potentially be in that conversation to be playing that off the ball outside linebacker-ish kind of spot, the big nickel spot. But I actually would not be surprised if we hear his name enter the portal here in a little bit, because he's just kind of caught in between about three different positions. Carson Van Dinter is another strong safety type. He's probably going to be a special teams ace this year. And then you got Luke Emmerich and Grant Dean. I think that's where your backup free safety is going to come from. There's such athletic ability between those two, especially Luke Emmerich, that there's going to be probably a push for one of them to be the free safety. And again, now that there is more balance to the safety room, you got two seniors, one junior, two redshirt sophomores, two redshirt freshmen, and true freshmen, there can actually be some development. So that Dean and Emmerich could potentially be in position to be your starting safeties next season, the season after that, whatever. So I don't think it's good. I think it's too early to say who, but it's more going to be thinking about how the defensive coverage system is going to be in place to help those guys. We're bringing in all these bigger corners and more corners, and they're still talking. I know they're talking about an Ohio State corner as well. Everyone thinks that means we're going to be playing more man. I thought the last 2 years, and including last year, our defense was best when we were playing zone, when we were playing cover 6, when we were playing cover 9, when we were rotating to cover 3, we were better that way. And you can play that way with big, rangy corners and big, rangy safeties. That's not an issue. So it's just about making sure that everyone knows their role within that system. Because I think at times last year where we had problems, where corners were freelancing, safeties weren't reacting fast enough, when Rico would kind of do his own thing, when Austin Brown would read his triggers wrong, that's where we got into more trouble than the fact of the individual players. I think having Paul Haynes there as kind of your de facto passing game coordinator for the defense is going to help us solidify how this group that's going to continue to grow probably here in the next couple weeks into a more solid unit. All right, so to wrap it up, let's bring this all together. And, okay, we have 8 spots left. Let's assume 8 spots left to this class. Where do I see us filling those 8 spots? Well, let's think about it. Let's go from the top and we'll work our way down. Do we need another quarterback? I don't think so. I think we're solid there. Could we use another running back? If he's a young guy, yes. So let's say +1 as a quarterback or as a running back. Do we need receivers? Yes. I still think we need another upperclassman and a younger guy. So I'd say I'm going to say at least 2 more receivers. That's going to put us at 3. Do we need any tight ends? No, I think we're good at tight end. We've got 7 of them. We got 8 if we include Tyrell Jancy. There's good balance there. I don't think we need another one there. Offensive line. I could see us getting another swing guy, a swing tackle guy, potentially a younger guy, or a upperclassman. So we'll say one. So it puts us at 4. D line. Do we need D line? Yes, I still think we need another true nose tackle and more depth at that spot. So I'm gonna say right there we need 2. So we're gonna say 2 there, or we'll say 1, and then depending on how they see that extra guy, because the other on that spot, I think we need at least one more outside linebacker. We need a run stopping field side outside linebacker. But this could also be a boundary 5-tech 4-eye defensive lineman. So between D line and outside linebacker, we need 2 guys. So that's going to put us right there. That's going to put us at 6. We've already been talking about us getting one more corner, the Ohio State kid. So let's say that puts us at 7. We've got one more spot available there. If we want one more, give me another D lineman, give me another give me another nose tackle. That gets us there. So if my numbers are correct, we'll go through it again. We got 1 running back, we got 2 receivers, we got 1 offensive lineman, we've got 2 defensive linemen, we've got an outside linebacker, edge rusher, big edge, and we've got a corner. That puts us at 8, and I think that's where our roster limit is right now, and I'm good at that. It's all going to depend if we lose anybody else to the portal. I certainly think we could. There have been some names that have been bandied about of guys who could potentially be leaving, who haven't left yet, who I'm actually surprised who haven't left yet. There is the Charles Perkins situation where maybe he can't leave. I was actually really bummed to see him enter the portal. Whatever that situation, however that plays out, that could affect the number as well. But I don't want to say I'm positive, because we know what positivity has done to us the last few years. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I really like how they have built the roster this offseason. I really like how they've built it this year. Roster management and roster construction was always my issue, or has been my issue going forward. And kind of taking the get what you need for right now mentality is going to serve us well this year, but it's going to serve us well going into next year, because it's going to show, 1, that we are not going to be afraid to spend money. 2, we are not going to be afraid to go after who we need, who we want. And it's going to show that we're taking that step towards modernizing in college football. I love going after the underdogs and the small school guys that we've done in the past, but I really like that we're getting guys from Iowa State and Oklahoma State and Florida State and Ohio State and Arkansas, Missouri, on top of your junior college transfers and your Buffalo and your Southeast Louisiana. It's how it should be. And I'm happy with the direction that we're going. Who knows if it's going to be enough, but I will say this at least. If the current staff is going down after this season, they're going down swinging. So let's just leave it at that. And let that be the positive note going into the 2026 season. All right, we're going to stop it there. Been talking for almost 55 minutes. I'm sure as soon as I post this, everything that I posted is going to be obsolete. But that is the off season. That is the transfer portal. And hey, it gives us more to talk about, right? So that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.